Welcome to the Feel Good Club podcast. I am Emma, your host. Thank you so much for being here today. If this is your first time joining, welcome. If you're a regular listener or a member of Showcase Wellbeing, thank you so much for returning. This week's show and theme in our studios is on movement or embodiment. Rather than just talking about poses or the asanas, it's about how we feel in this body of ours and how can we return back home to ourselves time and time again. So I hope you enjoy the show. I hope it helps you to feel well and to be liberated whilst living. Here's the show. Welcome, everybody. Thank you once again for being here today. So in our classes and in studio this week, we are moving on to what is the third limb on the 8-limb path of yoga, known as the asana. Now, asana means shapes, postures, could be movement. So it doesn't have to just be a yogic perspective. It could be the asana for you is Tai Chi or dancing or even just simply sitting in meditation. And in yoga, there is this view that in order for us to still the mind, we have to allow the body's fluctuations, toxins, maybe stagnant energy to be shifted so that it isn't burdened by aches, niggles, or pain. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later when we come to the details of this limb. But we're also going to discuss and look into a modern day perspective of what moving the body really means and how we can use the subtle messages from the body as a tool for communicating and aligning mind, body, breath, and soul together as one, rather than seeing this vessel, this physical vessel, as a separate entity to ourselves. Now, the reason why I think it's really important to explore the embodied practice of movement is because I hear so many people time and time again mention that they've got certain niggles or pains, or for example, tightness in the neck or the shoulders, or maybe hips are feeling a little bit achy or sore, or maybe plantar fasciitis where the heels and the feet are feeling very tight, maybe even burning, or maybe there's just a restlessness in the body. And I always ask whoever comes to me, whoever it might be in class or in practice, to reflect on what is that message that the body is trying to communicate. And I always believe that there is a direct link to whatever the symptom is that you're experiencing. So for example, if there is a tightness in the shoulders or the neck, metaphysically, what could that mean you have been carrying? What weight have you been holding? And normally we're able to kind of trace it back to a period or a moment where we were going through a difficulty, or maybe there's a stressful moment we were trying to control, and it sat on top of us. It held us tightly in our upper body, and then that's manifested later on down the line as maybe a bit of a crick in the neck or a tight shoulder. And so I think when we start to pay attention to these messages before we've come to the points of pain within the body, but we're able to experience these subtle messages much earlier on, we will likely find that we're able to keep our body in its condition of wellness for much longer. Now, of course, this isn't to say that, injuries don't occur, or a slip in the road or a trip on a banana peel doesn't happen. This is about just trying to have a conversation really with the body every day, rather than silencing it or pushing it to the side, or even maybe taking our bodies to certain extremes because we want to challenge it or even criticize it, forcing the body to go to these extreme measures just because we want to prove something. So I think it's important to hear the body, and we can do that through an embodied practice. And the other part of it, really, the importance of why I think being able to hear messages from the body through the asana or through the movement modality that you choose, or even through stillness, is it gives us this sense of coming home to ourselves when we allow ourselves to really listen and fine-tune these inner workings, these inner messages that the body offers to us. And when I say coming home to ourselves, what I mean is that we are able to return back to a place of wholeness when we return home to ourselves, where we get to actually hear those voices inside our mind and our body return away from all of the external distractions. It might even be on occasions, that you're in a practice or you're in a led class and your teacher is asking you to go deeper. So you go deeper within the posture or the movement because you've been told to. But actually, if we had been able to hear the messages of the body, we may have chosen not to go deeper because we know that our body doesn't need to go to that place today. So it's also given us this agency, this level of authority and ownership over ourselves because we know best, And that's what I mean by coming home to ourselves, really. And it can be done through regular practice of these embodied practices. And I'm going to share some examples of an embodied practice a little bit later on. Now, what do I mean by embodiment? You may have heard this word being thrown around recently. It seems to be a little bit of a buzzword, particularly on class descriptions now. And that's great because anything that gives people awareness of self, I think, is a brilliant thing to be able to offer. But what does it actually mean? So embodiment is any activity that you can take part on. So it might be, as I've mentioned, yoga or dance or tai chi or qigong or yoga nidra, which is yogic sleep, that intentionally connects the mind and the body to its physical sensations so that we have this opportunity to build self-awareness. We understand where our body is maybe feeling tight or more open on any given day. And it is important that we recognize every day is different and every chapter of our life is different. So we have to give the body grace as well to allow it to communicate its differences each day. It also allows us, through an embodied practice, to regulate our emotions so that we can live in the body rather than just living the body as an external object. It's like we are able to get out of the mind and into the body, allowing our experience to be from the inside out rather than the outside coming in. And in an embodied practice, we connect to the brain and the body's sensory motor systems by 3 different measures. The first is interoception, so sensing this internal state, this heartbeat that is just working without us having to do anything at all. This breathing that is entering and leaving the body. And also feeling tension. So an example of this may be when we are in meditation and we are beginning to breathe in and breathe out. And we can feel the ribs open and close. And we can kind of feel the traveling of the breath within the internal systems. The second sensory motor system of the connection between brain and body is proprioception. And this is a really interesting system. It allows the body and its ability to sense its position within space without having to really look at it, and how we move relative to gravity. So for me, proprioception at times can be a little bit tricky. It's a symptom usually of neurodivergence ADHD that at times I don't know how my body fits through a space of a door, so I'll bash into the frame of the door. So I have to really work to understand my body in space. And I often refer to this in practices in classes when we come to a warrior two stance, where our arms are shoulders apart. One hand is in front of the other hand is facing the back, and we've got a warrior stance in the legs. Our gaze is normally tracking over the front hand, but the back hand is kind of just floating in space. And to gauge your proprioception, I like to encourage people to see if they can lift that back hand so that it aligns with the level of the front hand without having to look at it. And when you do that, you get to feel and understand almost on a spirit level, a spirit measure level, where is my hand in relation to space within my body, within this space. And the third sensory motor system is exteroception, which is sensing our external environment through the five senses. And I'm going to take us through a little exercise on how we can connect with the external environment through our five senses in a moment. So those are the three things: interoception, proprioception, and exteroception, which is really a way of us regularly engaging when we know about them in an embodied practice that helps us to certainly manage how our body feels. It helps us actually to manage stress and anxiety as well, because it builds this level of psychological resilience that we are able to support the body and let it be a safe space. So we're going to go through a little practice. It's called the 5 sense meditation. And this is about the external environments and you bringing them in. So I'm just going to invite you to find a comfortable seat. Maybe if you're driving, you can do this as you're driving carefully. Or maybe if you're having a little bit of a walk, you can do this as walking too. We are going to have our 5 senses awakened here. But wherever you are, just make sure it's safe to do so. And maybe return back later if it's not. So, once you feel that you're in a comfortable, grounded spot, let's just take a breath in together, in through the nose and out through the nose. Just notice your breath coming in and your breath coming out. One more inhale and exhale. Now let your gaze just lift up so that it aligns with the nose. And just see, with your eyes only, if you can find 5 things around you in the space that you're in right now that you can label. So maybe if you're out and you're in nature, you can label 5 different elements of nature. Maybe it's something that you see on yourself or maybe equipment around you. Just list 5 things one at a time. Then once you have those 5 things, let's move the sense awareness away from sight now. You can close your eyes down here if you feel it's safe and comfortable to do so. And move the awareness to the sense of touch. And we're going to find 4 things that we can feel through our sense of touch. Maybe it's the clothes that are on your body. Maybe it's the ground beneath you. Maybe it's the elements around us. Maybe you can feel a small breeze or the sun. on your skin. Label 4 things that you sense as touch. Now move your awareness to the sense of hearing. And label 3 things that you can hear. They may be internal. You may be able to hear the sound and the quality of your breath. They may be external. Background noise. The noise of nature. Just label 3 things you can hear. And now to our 4th sense, our sense of smell. Can you smell something in the air? Maybe your own natural scent? Deepen your breath here just to feel that scent coming in. And label 2 things that you can smell. And now finally, 5th sense, the sense of taste. And just label 1 thing that you can taste. Maybe it's the remains of your morning toothpaste or food or drink you've eaten. It's 1 thing that you can label as taste. And then gently allow all of those senses to collect together. Our sight, our touch, our hearing, our smell, and our taste as we close the 5 sense meditation. So the purpose of that little exercise, and that is one that you can do daily as an embodied practice, is to allow our body to feel and call out those essential messages that we so very often forget about. We forget at times what it is that our eyes see, what it is that we're touching and we're hearing and we're smelling and we're tasting. And those messages are ones that are very important because they show us what are our likes, our dislikes, our preferences, and what is it actually that we need. So much so with the taste or the smell sense, if we have them, are really essential for us being able to fuel our body properly, So if we have stopped listening to those messages of the body, it's likely that our nutritional value will be lacking and we'll be calling out for other things because we maybe have got lost with those subtle messages. So an embodied practice just allows us to reignite those sensory communications internally so that we can live well through listening to the body's messages. And in yoga perspective, this would also link to the asana, as I've mentioned before. Asana being postures that are seen as a way to still the thinking mind. So as we've just experienced with that 5 sense meditation, we had to think to a certain element, but it was more about the feeling mind. How was the body feeling and experiencing rather than creating a narrative or a judgment on what it was experiencing, which so often seems to be the majority of our thinking mind, is that what are we judging it on? What is our opinion on it rather than just experiencing it? So the asana is a way of us being able to experience the feeling mind away from the fluctuations and the changes of our thinking mind. and to rid the body of its discomforts in order to find really a seat into meditation. So if you are a regular yoga practitioner, or maybe you have been practicing for many, many years, you're likely to have experienced a transformation in your yoga practice that maybe when you first started, you came just simply because it was a way to condition the body. And what you will have likely found over time and over practice is the transformation that it conditions actually the mind. And that is the whole purpose of an asana, a yoga practice physically, is to allow us to stop the body from its discomforts. And sometimes that means that we have to challenge the body a little bit more and maybe have more advanced postures. Now, those advanced postures within yoga history and philosophy would really only be for the people that really need extra support in stilling the mind. So I want to make it really accessible that if you find that just coming to a meditation seat and it being a very simple, easy seat, please know that you are also doing yoga. It doesn't have to be a very difficult, a very challenging posture for you to achieve this term yoga in terms of the asana or the postures. And likewise, if you are able to do the really challenging postures, see what it's like for you to be able to just sit in meditation and silence, and whether you're able to arrive there with a stillness, because that is the point where you'll be able to notice really your progression on your yogic path. So the idea of all of these postures within Hatha yoga, within the physical form, is to allow the body, as I said, to clear away from its discomforts, from its ailments, and to help the body feel conditioned and free, to set the mind free. And there is a stipulation within the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the ancient text of offerings, invitations of how we practice yoga. And for the asana practice, one of the sutras, which is one of my favorite sutras because it's the first one of the first ones that I was taught, is Sthira Sukham Asanam. And sthira, if we translate, means to be steady, to be really dedicated and steady in this balanced position that we are holding. And that really could just be a seat. It could be any seat that you arrive on your bottom, on your feet, on your hands, on your head. As long as it's steady, then that is one of the conditions the Yoga Sutras would invite you to achieve. The second, sukham, means to be easy, to be easeful, or as my teacher would refer to as sweet, a sweetness, a sukha to it, that feels that you could stay there for a long period of time because it's so sweet to be sat in it. Asana means the asana, to find your seat. So be steady, be easy in your seat. And my teacher has always mentioned within this context, which I think is a really great way to understand what our body is asking us for when we come to the mat and practice, or any physical practice that you have. It might be that you come to the gym, or it might be that you do dance. It might be, that you do CrossFit or high rocks, whatever your chosen asana practice is. My teacher always told me to never sacrifice the body for the glory of a pose. And I think that is a really important message to remind ourselves of regularly. The sacrifice comes, of course, when we want to place effort onto things and challenge the body, but often it comes at the cost of the body not being listened to, and that's when injuries arise. And I think in today's modern push world, it's almost become a little bit of a medal or a winning moment to come out of something with an injury, or, to be able to say, well, I've I've just ran this marathon and now I can't walk for a whole month. And I understand, the reasons people do these things are often not just for themselves, they're for a higher cause. So I totally understand it. But I also think that at times now, we are pushing ourselves to such extremes just to really see how far we can push our body. And we have lost the communication between body and mind. So this sutra of Sthira Sukha Asanam and never sacrificing the body in order for the glory of a pose really is allowing us to put the ego down and listen to what it is that I need, what my body needs right now on this day. And if you can return back to that every time you roll out your mat or prepare to put on your running shoes or put on your fitness clothing, whatever it may be, if you can return back to that very important message, let's make this steady, let's make this easeful so that I can have longevity, I think we will find our well-being is much better throughout a longer period of time. And it's also about not forcing ourselves to the point of abandoning ourselves as well. So asking and checking in, what am I noticing today? And can I meet myself with this level of steadiness and compassion? And when we do that, when we attune to those as sensations, there'll be messages, I promise you, that you will receive. Things like what I said earlier, the tightness in the shoulders. What is it that I've been carrying today? Maybe the butterflies, in the stomach. That's our intuition. It's telling me something. Maybe the racing heart, it's starting to beat really fast and we think that it's anxiety creeping in, but actually it might be that the body is preparing us for something. It's trying to save us. Or a deep sigh. What am I ready to let go of? So listening, it's not a question really of the body no longer speaking to us. It's just sometimes we've lost the art of being able to hear it. So through a yoga perspective, it allows us to return back to, I can hear my body speak to me again. From a modern day perspective, the research really suggests and shows that when we're able to hear these subtle messages of the body, we actually get to understand that it often is emotions that are stored in the body too. And this is the work of Bessel van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score. He suggests that in terms that are much more academic than this, but this is a term that is often floated around in the yogic world, is that there are issues in the tissues, such as psychological patterns like muscle tension or heightened or labored breath, maybe a posture misalignment, is really the backbone of what a modern day perspective is of how our body feels and the messages that it communicates to us is actually that a lot of the time it's the things that we store from a psychological perspective and cognitively that end up getting trapped in the body. And in yoga, we would liken this to samskaras, knots and holds that we have created in the body through not letting the mental fluctuations go. And this really, through the studies, please have a look at Bessel's work if you're interested. And he's done lots of different studies, particularly around yoga. And the work highlights really the importance of using this body to reconnect to ourselves as a point of safety rather than this, disconnect from our body. And within the book, The Body Keeps the Score, they also highlight how healing, it isn't only cognitive. It's not just, through the talking therapy. It's also experiential. So I don't know about you, whether you've ever experienced a practice where you've come out in floods of tears And it wasn't because the class was rubbish or the teacher wasn't great for you. It was because you had an experience physically, a somatic release in that practice. I know I've had it myself many times in a yoga practice where I've actually just felt so connected to myself that it's made me feel a little bit emotional, because it's that remembrance of, oh, okay, this is what life is supposed to be. But I've also experienced it within running, on trail running, that I lifted my heart rate up so fast that the release of it afterwards was to be very emotional. There was something that shifted in me on this day when I went for a run. So I also really do believe that the emotion, sometimes it gets trapped. These mental fluctuations, they get trapped in the tissues, in the fascia, which is having a lot of research done on it at the moment, how the fascia definitely stores energy, and energetic release can come from the fascia, which is a connective tissue in the body. So being able to heal our body isn't just about understanding, oh, I've got an ailment today. It's also tracing it back to maybe when did this start to manifest. And most of the times we'll find that it's come through thought as well. And the work that has been done across yoga for practices, particularly around PTSD, within Bessel's work has showed that through the body and the breath connection, there is certainly a connection to what is called the heart rate variability, which is the time variations between consecutive heartbeats and how it balances the nervous system. So as we inhale, if you do it now, take a breath in, the heart rate will actually rise, which then triggers the sympathetic nervous system, the system that allows us to get ready to either fight or flight or freeze. And then as we exhale, if you exhale now, the heart rate begins to lower, which then activates the opposite, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that allows us to feel a sense of rest, relaxation, and digest. So with those inhales and exhales, there is this constant metronome, this even balance of an up and a down, an ebb and a flow. And those heart rate variabilities are great when they're high, because that means our body is able and our breath is able to be flexible. It recognizes the ups and the downs, and that we're able to also support and by some extent control it through the breath and through the movement of the body. But at times, if we get trapped outside of the body's senses, what can happen is the heart rate variability goes very low, and maybe the breath gets either very labored, and then that means that we kind of drop into this freeze state, which then instructs the body to feel that you have to shut down from it, but your breath may be not as balanced maybe as it could be. So the heart rate variability is very much key in understanding how the body is focusing on its physical effort and its ease. And so when we help to train this physically within the body, we're training the body and the mind to have this psychological flexibility. And it's really important that we learn to do that. We learn to train the body and its connection to the mind through this breath, this beautiful tool that we have. And then hopefully what we're left with through this embodied practice and through the breath is successfully reaching this state of safety and presence and well-being. So how do we connect all of that together as a singular practice or multiple practices? It might not be that, you want to particularly track the heart rate variability. Maybe it's, something that feels a little bit too technical or a little bit too scientific for you. So what you can do is allow the body to take care of that itself by inviting it into methods and modalities that allow it to naturally reach those states of embodiment. And the first practice I would recommend is to move intrinsically. So what I mean by that is just find yourself in a space, maybe put some music on and just start to feel the rhythm in your body. And then you'll start to feel messages come in of, oh, I can roll that shoulder back now, or maybe I'll roll around into my hips, maybe I'll dangle forwards, or maybe it's when you're in your own class, maybe a yoga class, and you've come to a downward facing dog and you're being cued on your breaths and cued to remain still. But maybe for you on this week, you actually want to pedal through your knees and your heels a little bit and maybe twist a bit into your ribs and feel quite animalistic with it. So that's a way of being able to connect back to this embodied practices, to move intrinsically. Another practice I would recommend is Yoga Nidra, and we've been doing it all this week in classes, is allowing yourself to come to a stillness. And when you go through the sensations of the body, it's like taking your body on a story and consciously going into a dreamlike state. And I find Yoga Nidra to be so beneficial, so peaceful and calming, but also giving me a greater sense of awareness of my own body in its space, in its time. And then the third thing I would recommend as practices for this week for embodiment and returning home to yourself is just every day, wake up and ask simply, what is my body telling me today? What does it need? Does it need more action? Does it need more rest? Have I fueled my body properly yesterday, and does it feel energized today? Have I got any aches, niggles, stagnicity in the body? And just allow it to guide you with what your next steps are. But do that check-in with yourself, with your body every day and see what it brings. Hopefully, it brings you to a spot of feeling a little bit more aligned with yourself, coming back home to yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed. That's the end of the show today. Thank you so much again for staying, for being here, being part of this community. If it helps you, or if there is somebody that you think it would help, please share it to them and like and subscribe to the podcast. This is me, over and out. Om Shanti. Have a beautiful day.